In 1887, the San Bernardino City and County Directory claimed that this area where we are standing today, because of its proximity to Colton and San Bernardino, would probably never amount to anything more than a possible way station on the Southern Pacific Railroad. Evidently, the Mound City Land and Water Company didn't read that, because that's the same year they started building a luxury hotel on this site. This looked so good from the outside that Scipio Craig, the editor of the Citrograph, which was a Redlands weekly that was popular throughout Southern California, claimed that this may someday become world famous as a health resort. And they failed. This place was vacant for almost 12 years, and then the Loma Linda Association came to town. They're the ones who changed the name from Mound City to Loma Linda, a Spanish name literally meaning pretty hill. And they wanted to make this into a sanitarium, and they failed. In 1905, the Seventh-day Adventist Pastor John Burden and Ellen G. White decided to purchase this property and turn it into a Seventh-day Adventist sanitarium. And it had 64 rooms. It was lighted with electricity. It was heated with steam. There was about a mile of concrete sidewalks. There was an abundance of water coming from an artesian well. It was piped all over the premises. And there were canaries in the pepper trees. Some interesting things happened here in the early days. After we were here for 2 years, Ellen White suggested that we install an elevator here. So that first elevator, an Otis elevator, was installed in 1907. Almost immediately, right after we purchased the property, probably in 1906, we built an addition to this luxury hotel, and that was mainly for hydrotherapy, because hydrotherapy was a mainstay in the healthcare program of the Seventh-day Adventist sanitariums. And that hydrotherapy building was built about 20 or 30 feet away from where I'm standing to my east. Some interesting things happened with the hydrotherapy. There was a young man named Edmund Yeager, who was a student physician in the first class. He was on his way to Loma Linda from Riverside, riding over Pigeon Pass, and he was getting ready to take a test in histology, or microscopic anatomy. And he was feeling good. He was riding his bicycle, whistling, and he did not have his hands on his handlebar. And so he hit a rock and spilled, and he got a major sprain on his writing hand. Well, he picked himself up. He brought himself in to the hydrotherapy facility here, and the people told him that because of his sprain, he wouldn't be taking notes for 3 weeks. Dr. George K. Abbott, who eventually became who at that time was the first dean of the School of Medicine, a man who wrote books on hydrotherapy, said, "Don't you believe it, you'll be taking notes in 3 days." So he had hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold, and he was taking notes in 3 days. And in Yeager's oral history, he tells a story about a little boy in Riverside who had a foot injury, and that foot injury became infected. By the time he was taken to a hospital in Riverside, and we don't know if that hospital even exists today because it was a little over 100 years ago, the doctors there told his parents that they were going to have to amputate his leg to save his life. Well, of course, the parents were overwrought with that news, but they'd heard about the good reputation of the Loma Linda Sanitarium here on Sanitarium Hill. So they brought him here to this building that I've been discussing, and he got hot and cold, hot and cold, hot and cold, 3 minutes of hot, 1 minute of cold, hot and cold, and he eventually had amputated one knuckle of one toe. That's how powerful that was. You see, hydrotherapy not only increases the circulation of the blood, but it also increases the white blood count. And those are the good guys that fight the bad guys, the bad germs. I'll tell you one more story while we're here. It had to do with hydrotherapy on our Los Angeles campus. I discovered in our board minutes that we once had a department of fever therapy. Fever therapy was where they put a patient inside of a stainless steel compartment. They raised their temperature for a certain safe amount of time. And I understand that they were able to successfully treat gonorrhea and tertiary syphilis without drugs. Now, I talked to the son of the man who developed that Department of Fever Therapy. His name was Fred B. Moore, Jr., and he told me that his father, Fred Moore Sr., is the one who started the physical therapy program, the School of Physical Therapy at the College of Medical Evangelists. He said what stopped that was penicillin. When we got penicillin, the people who paid the bills said that hydrotherapy is labor intensive. We will pay for a shot of penicillin. And that's how we got out of hydrotherapy into drugs. Now, to the north of us, you will be able to see 2 rows of palm trees. There was once a grand stairway that went down to the train depot, the Loma Linda Depot. There were 119 steps that came up the north face of the hill to the north entrance of the Loma Linda Sanitarium. Now, to my east is the site of the Loma Linda Bowl.